Hello there, I'm Nicholas, and this is On Listening with Chi Rising Studio. Thank you for joining me today. Mindfulness is one of those words we hear a lot these days. On social media, in the workplace, and everywhere in between. But what I find fascinating is how such a simple concept, being present in this moment, can actually be quite challenging to put into practice in our daily lives. Let me share something that really struck me the other day. I was sitting having my morning coffee, and I suddenly realized I'd almost finished the cup without tasting a single sip. My mind had been somewhere else completely, thinking about emails, planning that day, thinking about a deadline. And it got me thinking about how much of our lives we spend like this, physically in one place, but mentally somewhere else entirely. And that's what I want to explore today. Not just what mindfulness is in theory, but how we can actually live it. How we can become more present in our everyday experiences. Because here's the thing, mindfulness isn't some mystical state that only monks can achieve. It's actually our natural state of being, but we've just gotten very good at being distracted from it. You know, it's quite remarkable when you think about it. Our minds have this amazing capacity to time travel, to plan for the future, to learn from the past. And that's incredibly useful, but sometimes this superpower of ours becomes a bit of a burden. We get caught up in replaying past events or worrying about future scenarios, and we miss what's happening right here, right now. I was speaking with someone recently who made a brilliant observation. She said, "It's like I'm watching a movie of my life instead of actually living it." And that really resonates, doesn't it? How often do we go through our daily routines on autopilot, not really experiencing what we're doing? Here's what's really interesting, and I find this absolutely fascinating. Every single moment gives us an opportunity to practice mindfulness. Take something as simple as drinking water. The next time you have a drink, try this. Really notice the sensation of picking up the glass, feeling its weight in your hand, noticing the temperature of the drink, and really tune in to the sensation as you take a sip. If it's a warm drink, notice the warmth moving downwards through your chest. And if it's cold, then notice the fresh, cooling nature of the drink. It's remarkable how different such a simple action feels when we bring our full attention to it. And we can even go a step further. As we take a sip, we often forget that what we're drinking is clean, accessible, and safe. Sometimes this is as simple as turning on the tap at your kitchen sink, and other times it's going through the motions of making the perfect espresso. Every time we have a drink, we have a moment in which we can remind ourselves that we have a drink, and we ought to be beaming with gratitude in that moment. Now, I know what might be going through your mind right now. That sounds great, but my mind is constantly racing. I can't seem to stay focused on anything for more than a few seconds. That's absolutely normal. In fact, that noticing, that realization that your mind has wandered, that's mindfulness. Think of it this way, and this is something that really helped me understand it better. Imagine you're teaching a dog to sit. The dog's understandably going to get distracted, right? It's going to wander off, maybe chase its tail, look for something to eat. Your job isn't to get frustrated with the dog. It's to gently and patiently guide it back. That's exactly what we're doing with our minds in practicing mindfulness. The goal isn't to have an empty mind. That's a common misunderstanding. The goal is simply to notice when our mind has wandered and bring it back to whatever we're doing in the present moment. Each time we do that, it's like doing a mental push-up. We're building that mindfulness muscle. And the beauty of it is that mindfulness doesn't require a special setting or an extended retreat. It's something we can integrate into the smallest moments of our lives. Washing the dishes, for example, is often thought of as a mundane chore. But what if, instead of rushing through it or distracting ourselves with music or even a podcast, we used it as an opportunity to be present, feeling the water on our hands, noticing the sound of the sponge against the plate, observing the rhythm of our movements. In that moment, you're no longer just washing dishes, you're engaging in a mindful practice. What's fascinating is how this shifts our relationship with time. Have you ever noticed that when you're fully immersed in an activity, time seems to flow differently? It's not rushing by or dragging on. It just feels natural. That's the power of presence. When we fully step into the moment, we're no longer resisting time or trying to influence it. We're simply living it. Here's a question worth pondering. If mindfulness is so natural and beneficial, why do we find it so difficult? Part of the answer lies in our conditioning. We live in a world that constantly pulls our attention outwards. Notifications, deadlines, the endless stream of information. It's not that these things are inherently bad, but they often train us to live in a state of perpetual distraction. And yet, mindfulness offers us a kind of antidote. It reminds us that we have a choice in where we place our attention. Even in the midst of a busy day, we can pause, take a breath, and anchor ourselves in the present. One practice I found especially helpful is taking a pause before transitioning between activities. Let's say you've just finished answering emails and you're just about to start cooking dinner. Between these activities, take 30 seconds. Stop. Close your eyes if you like, and take a few conscious breaths. Notice the shift in your body and your mind. This small ritual can help you carry mindfulness from one part of your day to the next. Of course, this isn't about perfection. There's going to be days when mindfulness feels effortless, and others when it feels like an uphill struggle. And that's okay. What matters is the intention, the willingness to keep coming back to the present, even when it's challenging. And over time, something subtle but profound begins to happen. We start to notice moments of beauty and joy that we might have otherwise overlooked. The way sunlight filters through the trees, the sound of laughter in the distance, the simple pleasure of feeling the ground beneath our feet. These moments, fleeting as they might be, remind us of the richness of life. Mindfulness also teaches us to approach ourselves with greater compassion. When we catch our minds wandering or notice we've been caught up in negative thinking, it's so easy to judge ourselves harshly. But mindfulness invites us to respond with kindness, to treat ourselves as we would a friend. And this shift in perspective can be incredibly healing. Finally, as we practice, something else begins to emerge, a sense of gratitude. Not the kind of gratitude that feels forced or performative, but a quiet, genuine appreciation for the life we're living. We begin to see that even in the midst of challenges, there's so much to be thankful for. The drink in our glass, the food in our fridge, the train that takes us to work in the morning, and even the pillow we rest our head on at night. In many ways, mindfulness is a practice of remembering what it feels like to be alive, to truly inhabit our own experience. It's not about escaping or trying to fix anything, but about coming home to ourselves just as we are. So, as you go about your day, I invite you to choose one small activity, maybe brushing your teeth, walking to the car, or sipping your coffee, and turn it into a moment of mindfulness. Notice the sensations, the textures, the sounds. In the end, mindfulness isn't something we do, it's something we are. And the more we practice, the more we realize that the present moment is not just where life happens, it's where life begins. If you found value in this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend who might also find it interesting. Your support helps us continue to create this space for learning and growth. You can find out more about our studio and the podcast at chirising.studio.